With offices in New York City, Michael Rader made his mark internationally as artistic director for Cirque du Soleil's production of Verikai. Other credits include A Christmas Story, Stalking the Boogeyman, The Testament of Mary Scrooge the Musical, Mandela, You Are Not Alone, and many others. Michael has overseen productions with the Sacramento Music Circus, the Zoc Theater, Your Theater Company, Actors Studio Repertoire Theater, the Human Race Theater, the Dramatists Guild, the Huron Playhouse, Forestburg Playhouse, and William Finn's Elegies, a Song Cycle, a critically acclaimed off-Broadway benefit production. He earned his MFA in directing from the Actors Studio Drama School at Pace University. He is an alumnus of the Lincoln Center Theater Directors Lab, and he is a proud member of SDC. That stands for Stage Directors and Choreographers, right? Okay, in addition to directing and acting, Michael teaches. He is a Broadway liaison and arts education consultant for the New York City Department of Education. And in particular, he directs a group called Hole in the Wall Gang Camp, which is to empower the lives of the less fortunate, particularly children in need in the city. Michael has also served on the faculty of Songfest at the Colburn School in Los Angeles and the Summit School near Washington, D.C. Last year was his first as the director at Cape Playhouse. He is credited for dramatically improving the quality of productions and for successfully leading some fundraising efforts. Their production of Gypsy, which he directed, broke box office records and was nominated for 3 Broadway World Awards, including Best Musical and Best Direction. As the 93rd season at the Playhouse is about to open, and as he begins his 2nd season there, it gives me great pleasure to present the producing artistic director of our venerable Cape Playhouse, Michael Rader.
Hi everybody, good evening. Apologies if I'm clearing my throat a lot. I'm sure everyone else like me is covered in yellow today. So I will do my best to be as clear as possible. So thank you for being here. It's an honor. It sounds cliche for me to say it, but to be able to stand in front of you and talk about this really historic institution. It's not only enjoyable for me, I love telling these stories because there's some great stories that go along with this institution, but we're so fortunate to have this theater in our community and in our backyard, and I love being able to share that with everyone and talk about it. So thank you for being here. Thank you for coming tonight to hear about it. This is actually the start of my 3rd season. I need to update that bio at the Playhouse. This year, our 93rd, 3rd season here, and thrilled to be sharing with you some background about the theater. So shall we jump in? Great. Pardon me while I get used to this. There we go. All right. So the Playhouse story begins officially in the year 1927. During that winter, a 28-year-old former teacher from Baltimore with a bold dream bought a meeting house, moved it to a pasture in Dennis, and in doing so, founded the Cape Playhouse. In Dennis Village, Raymond Moore, the founder, found what he was looking for. He found a central location, a large plot of land, and a conveniently abandoned meeting house that had been used previously as a Unitarian church, a stable, a tin house, a barn, and probably most appropriately, a slaughterhouse. The Unitarian Meeting House had been built in 1838 and would soon transition to the most famous summer theater in the United States. So this is where, it was actually, the original meeting house was located here. It is now here, so they moved it on logs down the road here, all the way down the road, and parked it at what is now its resting place at the Cape Playhouse. This gives you a little better idea. This is where it is sitting now. So it had to be moved all the way down the road, and it sits here now. I have full confidence we'll regain. There we go. Great. So Raymond Moore purchased the meeting house for several $1,000s, and additionally he bought those 3 parcels of land for $1,200. He then hired Isaiah Grafton Howes to supervise the moving of the theater down the road. And about halfway in the process, they ran out of money, so they did what any normal moving company would do. They parked the building on the side of the road and waited until Moore could raise the funds. But raise the funds he did, and the building continued. Moore then found a gentleman by the name of Cleon Throckmorton, who was charged with converting the theater, or the slaughterhouse, into a theater. No small task. He had also been responsible for converting, for those of you who've been to Westport Playhouse, also converting Westport Playhouse in Connecticut. It's the same architect who did both buildings. There's just lots of similarities if you've seen both of the spaces. So he designed the space into a stage, a fly space for the scenery, so that scenic drops could be raised and lowered. And he left the oak pews at the church's hand-hewn barn beams at the top of the building to give the theater much of its charm and history. Moore then began writing to his famous Broadway actors, asking them if they would be interested in starring in productions in his inaugural season at the Playhouse. The invitation to escape the heat of New York City in the summer and to headline at a new theater in Cape Cod was very appealing. And he was miraculously able to secure the appearances of well-known actors Peggy Wood, Basil Rathbone, and this is my favorite, Laura Hope Cruz. Wouldn't you love to have tea with Laura? He was able to secure the appearances of these well-known actors at his theater before he even had a season announced. And so Moore got to work on securing housing for his actors, directors for his shows, costumes, lighting, and set designers. He found a space nearby to rehearse and hired a support staff to man the box office and administration. Meanwhile, the hammers flew fast and furious, and on July 4th, 1927, the Cape Playhouse was, for better or worse, ready to open. The curtain went up that night with Basil Rathbone and Violet Cooper starring in The Guardsman. It was raining so hard that night that patrons literally had to hold umbrellas to keep themselves from getting wet. Leaking roof or not, Moore's dream was well underway. That evening, a note in the playbill from Moore read, "The Cape Playhouse has many problems to meet, many obstacles to overcome, but it believes that it can and earn the faith, respect, and support of the people of Cape Cod. It believes that it has a place in the American theater." And this is a picture of, this is Basil Rathbone in the very middle here, standing outside our loading dock doors, which are still there to this day. As word spread of the Playhouse and Moore's aspirations, so did the interest of many actors. During 1928, the second season of operations, 3 newcomers got to test their skills at the Playhouse. The first was a young man named Robert Montgomery, who starred in a production at the Playhouse of The Silver Cord. Montgomery would later go on to be nominated for 2 Oscars. Also making his professional debut at the Playhouse that summer was a tall, 6'1", 23-year-old man who had been recently bitten by the theater bug while performing at the Omaha Community Playhouse. At the recommendation of a family friend, Dottie Brando, yes, you may recognize that name. Dottie was in fact the mother of another young actor, Marlon. He made his way east. After some success in Omaha, Henry Fonda found the Cape Playhouse. His first stop, Cape Cod. Not far behind him was a young lady who had made the trip to Cape Cod as well that summer with her mother in tow, hoping for a job as an apprentice. She was disappointed to learn that all positions were filled. However, there was a spot for an usher, and she gladly accepted. Can you imagine Henry Fonda same summer. A few weeks later, she had managed to secure herself a part in Mr. Prim Passes By, and a year later, she was the Playhouse's leading ingenue. Betty Davis's career was officially launched at the Cape Playhouse. Raymond Moore also went to work engaging the services of a Provincetown artist and architect, Alfred Easton Poor, to design a cinema for the Playhouse grounds. The auditorium was designed in the Art Deco style and included 317 individual armchairs of black lacquer and tangerine suede produced by the Frankel Galleries in New York. The auditorium was designed in the style of Art Deco and included these handmade chairs. Those of you who have been recently, you know they've all been recently renovated. Moore also commissioned the world-renowned artist Rockwell Kent to paint a mural for the cinema. Upon completion, the mural was the largest single indoor canvas in the United States. The cinema, in turn, flourished, and 9 years later, it played host to the world premiere of one of the most famous movies ever made to this date. MGM's most expensive production at that time, costing the studio a staggering $2.7 million, found its audiences at the Playhouse. Margaret Hamilton had been making her professional debut as an actor at the Playhouse, but this time you had to walk across the parking lot to the theater where you would get a glimpse at Hamilton starring in The Wizard of Oz. The Wizard of Oz made its world premiere at the Cape Playhouse, and among those in attendance that evening was Gertrude Lawrence. Richard Aldridge soon took over the reins of the Playhouse after Moore's death. It was Aldridge who expanded the practice of casting well-known stars in Playhouse productions and also developed a series of productions that could be packaged and travel to other theaters such as the Westport Playhouse or the Ogunquit Playhouse, both still in operation today. Little did Aldridge know that by implementing this star system, he would not only alter the course of the Playhouse forever, but also his own personal life. When Gertrude Lawrence first came to the Playhouse in 1939, she was already a very well-established actress. She had a profoundly flourishing career both in the West End in London and stateside on Broadway. At that time, she was essentially jumping from project to project and was a favorite of many patrons and producers. She became a household name and was an international celebrity and star after turn productions in Lady in the Dark, OK, Tonight at 8, and Private Lives. It was that search for a private life that was actually so appealing to Miss Lawrence when the Playhouse came knocking. When approached about a 3-week stay at the Cape Playhouse on a beach in Cape Cod, Gertrude thought, maybe I'll try this out. Richard Aldridge was nervous when he and his staff arrived at the Yarmouth train station to greet the star. The two greeted each other with a polite handshake, and just over a year later, they would be joining hands in marriage. Aldridge and Gertie were mutually smitten. Gertrude fell in love with not only Richard, but with Cape Cod and the Playhouse. She appeared in at least one production every year from that point forward until her death in 1952. She and Richard built a house in Dennis that is still there, and she regularly played the role of mother to the apprentices at the Playhouse. She was even known to calm the temper of a one Miss Tallulah Bankhead, who was performing at the Playhouse and to everyone's surprise brought along her pet lion. Yes. Aldridge, meanwhile, kept busy, hard at work building the theater. He established a new policy for an apprentice program, and that attracted candidates from all over the world to serve as scenic artists. In 1947, Time magazine showcased the Playhouse with a special feature about what it was like working as an apprentice in the American theater. They chose the Cape Playhouse as their model. Notice now, if you will, the conveniently positioned workhorse, Gertrude Lawrence, who was positioned throughout the expose. There we are, handing a chair down from the balcony, and thank God Gertrude is there to grab that chair. There's the apprentices rehearsing, and thankfully Gertrude is up on the balcony giving them direction. Oh, there we are moving out of the Star Cottage. Thank God Gertrude is in the back there carrying a heavy basket of supplies. And here we are. This is my favorite picture. This is the apprentices and Gertrude down on Corporation Beach. I don't know why they all have guns, but it's a great picture. In 1968, another star came, arguably just as famous, if not more famous, came to the Playhouse to create a movie about Gertrude Lawrence's life. Here now is rare, behind-the-scenes footage of Julie Andrews filming Star at the Playhouse.
Everything about Gertrude Lawrence was a little larger than life, and her life was as vivid and dramatic as any role she ever played. In Cape Cod, she met Richard Aldrich, the one man who tamed her quick temper. Richard Crenna co-stars with Julie in this part.
You're damn right we have. Mr. Aldrich, I appeal to you. We are married. I am determined to leave you. You are determined to stop me. Now, what would you do?
As I'm not directing the play, Miss Lawrence, I can't help you.
I am going out of that door, out of your life forever. I am leaving you, and I'm leaving now. See what I mean? I'd simply have to stay with a man like that, wouldn't I?
Isn't that lovely? So during the time of the Aldriches, the Playhouse was able to attract some of the brightest talent around, including Gregory Peck, Baby June Havoc, as in Gypsy fame, Nancy Davis, or Mrs. Ronald Reagan, Helen Hayes, Shelley Winters, Olivia de Havilland of Gone with the Wind, Walter Matthau, and Kitty Carlisle, to name just a few. Gertrude died in 1952 while performing The King and I on Broadway. The night of her funeral in New York City, all of the Broadway and West End theaters dimmed their marquee lights to honor the passing of one of the greatest. This is her dressing room at the Playhouse, and it's still, every day we still put out fresh flowers. It's a tradition for us, and that is the portrait of her in the background in The King and I. It still hangs in her dressing room to this day. If we forget the flowers, things inevitably go wrong. So we are religious, superstitious about keeping the flowers. The showstopper for London, Miss Gertrude Lawrence, was buried in the Aldrich family plot in Upton, Massachusetts. During the next decade of the 1950s, the Playhouse again garnered the talents of some of the greatest stars. That include Merv Griffin, Jane Meadows, Ann B. Davis, remember Ann B. Davis? Vivian Vance, and of course, Miss Betty White. And Betty, of course, her and her husband worked at the Playhouse together. The artistic director at that time soon learned that sometimes with big stars come big egos. There's a famous story at the Playhouse of an actor who arrived after midnight after opening, took one look at the set and declared that it was the wrong color since it clashed with her costume. Repainting was ordered and completed at 3 a.m. At the dress rehearsal early the next morning, the actress announced that the shade was still not quite acceptable. The brushes came out and another coat was put on. The curtain went up that evening. The flats were still tacky, but the star was pleased. The artistic director may have been pulling his hair out over the ego that accompanied some of the stars, but with the stars came great ticket sales. So they trudged forward, and stars of film and theater continued to appear at the Playhouse. Over the next 10 years, the talents of Gertrude Page, Betsy Palmer, Ben Gazzara, believe it or not, Tallulah Bankhead and her pet lion, Mr. Jerry Orbach, the incomparable Jessica Tandy, and of course, Shirley Booth. After winning the Academy Award for Best Actress in the film version of Comeback Little Sheba, Shirley Booth came to the Playhouse to star in the stage version of that movie. She fell in love with the Playhouse and continued to perform there regularly. In fact, her adoration for the theater was so strong that her estate donated her Oscar and Emmy Awards, which are proudly on display in our lobby to this day. Another significant contribution that happened during that time was the broadening of Raymond Moore's initial desire for substantial educational programming. Starting in 1956 and continuing well into the 1970s, the Playhouse was home to 3 different training programs: the American Theater Wing Workshop, followed by the American Academy of Dramatic Arts, and lastly, Act Now, which is a wing of the drama department at the Cape Cod Community College. Among the students in the initial classes at the Playhouse was a young man, thoroughly engaged student that showed a young woman, excuse me, the thoroughly engaged student. She showed great promise. Her talent shined, and so she was given a part in The Male Animal, where she was able to share the stage with her father, Henry Fonda. Jane Fonda's career was launched at the Playhouse. I am grateful to report that today the Playhouse has returned a commitment to honoring Moore's wishes of having educational and outreach programming as part of our education classes at the theater. Our unique approach to theater and arts education affords the youth of the Cape Cod community with the rare and exceptional opportunity to study along some of the top talent on Broadway. Additionally, to this day, we still present weekly children's shows on Fridays throughout the summer months. The greatest contribution, however, to the Playhouse during that generation may have been the introduction of a pair of scenic designers to the Playhouse family. After the death of a longtime designer, Moore hired former apprentice Helen Pond and her partner Herb Sen, fresh out of Columbia grad school, as co-designers at the Playhouse. And this is the two of them right there. For 4 decades, Helen and Herb produced thoroughly stunning sets, not only for the Playhouse, but for stages in New York, Boston, and internationally. And this is Herb and Helen back here mixing, it looks like mixing some paint, and he's painting some trim. From Shakespeare to Noel Coward, their diverse body of work included productions with the Boston Ballet, their yearly Nutcracker, and numerous sets for Boston Opera productions as well. Pond and Sen were known for their beautifully hand-painted scenery, which often brought rounds of applause from audiences when the curtain would rise at the Playhouse. Backstage, they were known to be exceptionally generous, kind, and caring mentors to the crew, and no doubt launched many, many a career. Here are now some pictures from productions, highlights of productions at the Playhouse. This is Betsy Palmer in 1959. This is Sleuth. And what's important to remember is then these productions ran for 1 week. So this was built for a 1-week production. And this is Dangerous Obsession in 1991. 1 week. Could be in a museum, could it not? While their work took them around the world, as the demands were met on Broadway, they designed for the White House, and on the West End in London. Fortunately, they always came back to the Playhouse, and to this day, their names still hang above the doors on our scene shop. In the 1970s, the stars continued to visit the Playhouse. During that time, we welcomed the talents of, Lynn Redgrave, Sandy Dennis, Jerry Stiller, Lana Turner, Margaret Hamilton returned, Ginger Rogers, Douglas Fairbanks Jr., Meredith Baxter Burney, Sybil Shepherd, Gavin MacLeod, and Cloris Leachman. The next 20 years at the Playhouse saw the introduction of 2 new artistic directors, Evans Hale and myself, and also Mark Cuddy, who served in the new position of Playhouse producer and chief executive. Here now is a look back at some of the productions from the last few decades that have graced the stage at the Playhouse. This is Steel Magnolias. $1 Million Quartet. Altar Boys. South Pacific. And Clue on Stage. This upcoming season sets a new bar for us at the Playhouse. Features 3 plays and 3 musicals, including 3 Playhouse premieres, in a season featuring Tony and Drama Desk award-winning shows. The lineup this season, our exciting lineup, features The Importance of Being Earnest, which starts a week from Wednesday at the Playhouse. That's going to star several individuals that you might know. A gentleman whose name is escaping me right now, starring from Frasier, the television show Frasier, is playing Lady Bracknell. So this is our first show of the season. It was our most requested in our season survey every year. This is our most requested show to be presented. So we're happy to oblige, which is one of the funniest plays that I know of. Following that will be the Playhouse premiere of Little Shop of Horrors. This will run for 2 weeks at the Playhouse. Beautiful, beautiful, gorgeous set. No spoiler alerts, there's a large hydraulic plant. It's worth coming to see just that plant. And we have a gentleman starring in that production who his name is Andrew Keenan Bolger, and he originated the role of Crunchy in the Disney film or musical Newsies. So a lot of amazing Broadway talent coming for that show. Following Little Shop of Horrors is a musical called Once that was just recently on Broadway. It was our most requested musical. So again, you ask and you shall receive. Once is set in Dublin. All the actors in the show also play instruments. So if you saw $1 Million Quartet or no $1 Million Quartet, it's similar to that. I don't know how they do that or how they were gifted that much talent, but it's really, really, really amazing. And if you like Irish music, it's quite a stunning show. It's the only show in the history of Broadway to win both the Academy Award, the Grammy, Olivier, and Tony Award. So it's relatively well done, I would say. Following Once is one of the most famous musicals of all time, A Chorus Line. It's going to have a cast of 25, all that iconic music. We're so excited to be bringing such a big, big, big show to the Playhouse this summer. We have 2 Broadway veterans who are directing and choreographing it, and several people that were in the Broadway production. I should also say that we have 3 original cast members from the Broadway production of Once who are in our production as well, who are reuniting to come to the Playhouse. Noises Off, one of my favorite comedies of all time, which is a behind-the-scenes look at what it's like to put on a play. For those of you who don't know Noises Off, for the first act, you watch from the audience a very amateur group of actors rehearsing a show. For the second act, the entire set turns around and you watch it as if you're sitting backstage. So you see all the antics that are happening backstage. And then the third act, the set turns back around and you get to watch all of the mayhem as they try to perform the show. It's one of the most famous comedies of all time. And Heidi Gardner, who is a cast member on Saturday Night Live, will be headlining that show. And we're so, so thrilled to have someone like her coming to the Playhouse. Our final show of the season is our most requested murder mystery comedy thriller, Death Trap. We have Tony-nominated director Marcia Migrum Dodge directing, two-time Tony nominee Allison Frazier starring. And if you don't know this show, this play is unique in that it will have bone sort of chingling moments, surprise moments, and then it's also sort of belly laugh funny. So it's a wonderful mix of comedy and thriller, and we're ending our season well with that. It's cliched again for me to say it as the artistic director, but as I often tell most people who I'm hiring for the theater, whether it's directors, designers, actors, the Playhouse is special. There's not many places left like it in the world. I've been fortunate to have worked all over the world in large theaters and small theaters and commercial theaters at the Broadway level with Cirque du Soleil and with other nonprofit institutions. And the Cape Playhouse has a quality and an energy about it that I have rarely witnessed. As the world of producing theater changes, so does the business of remaining and maintaining a 93-year-old facility. Raymond Moore had a secret $12 million backer. If anyone has their checkbooks tonight, they can come see me if you would like to be a secret $12 million backer. Today, we must look forward towards the community to help sustain our mission of producing exceptional theater while maintaining a dynamic and historic art center. I am proud to report that over the last 3 years, while I've been at the Playhouse, we have dramatically improved the quality of our productions. We have established a mentoring system for our production staff and artisans that was first modeled by Helen and Herb Sen. We have conducted successful fundraising that has erased our debt. We have launched new educational and outreach programming for the community, honoring Raymond Moore's original vision. We have secured the largest single donation in Cape Playhouse history, and we were named one of the 50 greatest small stage theaters in America. Also, the productions of South Pacific, Million Dollar Quartet, and Gypsy the last 3 years have broke all box office records. And I'm happy to report that tomorrow morning, brand new air conditioning units are being installed at the theater. Yes. Brand new air conditioning, and I'm also reminded that you can now bring your drinks into the theater with you as well. I knew you would like that. Brand new air conditioning, and exciting news about chairs coming, but not quite yet. Stick with me. We're making it happen. We're making it happen. Tallulah Bankhead, the famous actress, once said, "If you want to support the American theater, don't be an actor, be an audience member." We have a rare gift in Cape Cod of the Cape Playhouse. And thus, I invite you, please, keep coming back, or come to visit us if you haven't been before. Remain audience members, remain friends, and forever grace the Playhouse with your presence. The theater belongs to all of you, to the community of Cape Cod, and as I said at the beginning, I look forward to sharing and developing that institution with you. Thank you all for being here today. I'm humbled always by being able to share this history, and I look forward to seeing you all again soon, hopefully on the steps of the Playhouse. Thank you.